For my final project in Latin 301, I decided to focus on Roman astronomy, mythology, and creation stories. Throughout this project, I will be comparing two Roman creation stories. These two stories come from excerpts taken from the works of two Roman authors. These authors are Marcus Tullius Cicero and Publius Ovidius Naso, both of whom took controversial ideas, like creation, and interwove their own opinions into their writings. First, let's start with some Roman astronomy. Much like many of us do today, the Romans probably looked up at the stars and wondered what was up there. We as humans know a lot more today than we did back then, but the fact still remains that much of our universe remains undiscovered. As for our own solar system, 5 of the planets, not including Earth, have been known to exist for thousands of years. They are Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. The ancient Greeks and Romans wrote about the planets many centuries ago. Because the planets look like stars to the naked eye, that is where the term planets comes from. Because the planets move in the sky, they were termed wandering stars, which actually comes from the Greek word for wanderer, or planetes. The other 3 planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, were not discovered until at least the 1700s, which was a long ways off from the other ones. Pluto is no longer a planet since it was reclassified as a dwarf planet in 2006. Uranus was discovered in 1781 by the famous astronomer Sir William Herschel. The planet has been sighted as early as 1690 by the English astronomer John Flamsteed. It was also sighted by Pierre Lonier in the mid-1700s. Sir Herschel at first thought Uranus was a comet, but he noticed the irregularities early on and compared it to a planet in his notes. There were more theories created by astronomers and philosophers that, although followed in the wake of Ovid and Cicero's death, were nonetheless very important to the models of the universe that we have today. One such theory was the Ptolemy geocentric model. Although the basic tenets of Greek geocentrism were established by the time of Aristotle, the details of his system did not become standard. The Ptolemaic system, developed by the Hellenistic astronomer Claudius Ptolemaeus in the 2nd century AD, finally standardized geocentrism. His main astronomical work, the Almagest, was the culmination of centuries of work by Hellenistic, and Babylonian astronomers. For over a millennium, European and Islamic astronomers assumed it was the correct cosmological model. In Ptolemy's geocentric model, the Earth was believed to be at the center of the cosmos. 7 planets were placed in orbit around it in an order of increasing distance from the Earth, as established by the Greek Stoics. The Moon, Mercury, Venus, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. The inner planets, Mercury and Venus, and the outer planets, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, were identified by ancient Babylonian astronomers later on. By Aristarchus of Samos and later Nicolae Copernicus's heliocentric system, which he wrote about in 1543 in a work titled De Revolutionibus Orbium Coelestium, the Earth came to be considered a planet, revolving with the other planets around the Sun, in the following order of distance from the Sun: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. The Sun, now situated near the center of the revolution, was no longer considered a planet. Now that we've covered some basic astronomy, the topic of Roman and Greek myths can be addressed. Most people, including myself, believe that in contrast to that of the Greeks, Roman mythology seems as though it is slightly lacking. The Greeks used myths more for entertainment, whereas the Romans focused more on history and the foundation of their empire. The Greeks, for example, had their own unified version of the creation story. According to theogony, chaos, the dark silent abyss from which all things were created, first produced Gaia, or what we call today as the Earth. She is also spelled G-E in many creation stories. Gaia or the earth, brought forth Uranus, or the heavens. These two celestial beings had a number of offspring. Their offspring are divided loosely into two generations of Titans. The first generation of Titans were 12 in number, 6 of whom were male, and 6 of whom were female. Wow, what a lot of kids. The second generation of Titans consisted of the offspring of Hyperion, who was from the first generation. His children were Eos, or the dawn, Helios, or the sun, and Selene, or the moon. The offspring of Iapetus, also from the first generation, included Atlas, Prometheus, Epimetheus, among others. These Titans mated with each other and produced a multitude of gods and goddesses, who are the main characters in many other Greek myths. Cronus, the youngest of the Titans, and his sister, Rhea, were the parents of 6 of the 12 Olympians. Cronus, fearing that one of his offspring would depose him, how ironic, consumed the first 5 of his children as they were born. Talk about family issues. Rhea begged her parents to help her save her next child, and they answered her plea by spiriting her away to Crete, where Zeus was born. Rhea ended up hiding Zeus in a cave, then returned to Cronus, and tricked him into thinking he was consuming Zeus by feeding him a stone wrapped in a blanket. Zeus remained in Crete, and when he grew to manhood, he returned to Mount Olympus to wage war on Cronus. He forced Cronus to disgorge the other children he had swallowed, and they, being gods, had become fully formed in their father's stomach and were alive upon being disgorged. Together with Zeus, they fought against the rest of the Titans. The Titans were defeated and exiled, and Zeus became the ruler of the Olympians and god of the sky, therefore taking his rightful place at the head of the throne in Mount Olympus. As a rule, the Romans were not myth-makers, and the myths that they had were usually imported. The Roman gods were utilitarian, like the practical Romans themselves. These gods were expected to serve and protect men, and when they failed to be useful, their worship was curtailed. Most Roman myths focused on historical figures, or man, as opposed to the gods themselves. They had a pantheistic sense of the divinities present in nature, but their deepest religious feelings centered on the family and the state. When the Romans adopted the Greek gods from the 3rd century BC on, these deities were simplified to conform to the Roman religion. Mars was the chief god of the imperial age, more honored than Jupiter since he aided and symbolized the Roman conquests, a huge difference as compared to the worship of the Greeks. Roman mythology is the body of traditional stories pertaining to ancient Rome's legendary origins and religious system, as represented in the literature and visual arts of the Romans. The study of Roman religion and myth is complicated by the early influence of Greek religion on the Italian peninsula during Rome's protohistory, and by the later artistic imitation of Greek literary models by Roman authors. The Romans were curiously eager to identify their own gods with those of the Greeks, and reinterpret stories about the Greek deities under the names of their Roman counterparts. Marcus Tullius Cicero, who had been cited as the greatest Roman orator of the late Roman Republic, was one of the leading political figures in the era of Julius Caesar, Pompey, Mark Antony, and Octavian. A string of misjudged alliances saw him exiled and eventually murdered. But Cicero's writings barely waned in influence over the centuries. It was through him that the thinkers of the Renaissance and Enlightenment discovered the riches of classical rhetoric and philosophy. Cicero wrote a collection of books. This collection was called De Re Publica, the sixth of which was called Somnium Scipionis, or the Dream of Scipio. This excerpt from this writing highlights Cicero's viewpoint on what the universe looks like through the lens of a dream the younger Scipio has as the elder Scipio visits him and explains the workings of the universe. Non ne spicis quae in templo veneris? Novem tibi orbibus vel potius globus connexa sunt omnia, quorum unus escaestis extimus, qui reliquos omnes complicitur, sumus ipse Deus arcens et continens ceteros, in quo sunt infixi illi, qui voluntur, stellarum cursus sempiterni, cui subjecti sunt septem, qui versantur retro contraria motu atque caelum, et quibus summum globum possidet illa, quam in terra Saturniam nominant, dende est hominum genere prosperus et salutaris ille fulgor, qui dicitur Jovis, tuum rutilis horribilisque terris, quam Martinium dicitis, diende subter mediam fere regionem sol obtinit, dux et princeps et moderatur luminum reliquorum, mens mundi et temperatio, tanta magnitudine ut cuncta sua luce lustrat et compleat. Hunc et comites consequuntur veneris alter merceri cursus, in infirmoque orbe luna radius solus excensa convertitur. Infra autem iam nihil est nisi mortale et caducum praeter animus munere deorum hominum genere datus. Supra lunam sunt aeterna omnia, nam ea quaes media et nona tellus neque movitur et infirma est, et in eam feruntur omnia nuto sua pondera. The translation of this passage is: See, the universe is linked together in 9 circles, or rather spheres, one of which is that of the heavens, the outermost of all, which embraces all the other spheres, the supreme deity, which keeps in and holds together all the others, and to this are attached those everlasting orbits of the stars. Beneath this there lie 7, which turn backwards with a counter-revolution to the heavens. And of these spheres, that star holds one, which men on earth call Saturn's star. Next is that bright radiance rich in hope and healing for the sons of men, which is called Jove's star. Then one fiery red and dreaded by the world, which you call Mars. Next, lower down, the sun holds nearly the middle region, the leader, chief and ruler of the other lights, the mind and ordering spirit of the universe of such magnitude that he illuminates the whole and fills it with light. With him Venus and Mercury keep pace as satellites in their successive spheres, and in the lowest zone of all the moon revolves, lighted up by the rays of the sun. Now below these there is nothing more but what is mortal and transient, except those souls which the bounty of the gods has given to the sons of men. Above the moon all is eternal. As for the earth, the 9th and central globe, it does not move, but it is the lowest point, and towards it all heavy bodies tend by their own gravity. In this passage, Cicero shows his partiality to geocentrism as well as his knowledge of each of the planets. He describes their likeliness, thus explaining why each is named for the Roman god it honors. Publius Ovidius Naso, on the other hand, was a Roman poet who lived during the time period of Augustus. He is often credited as being one of 3 canonical poets of Latin literature, and the Latin scholar Quintilian considers him the last of the love elegists. Ovid wrote a collection of myths in his work that was titled Metamorphoses. This collection, although considered an etiology, or a large group of stories that explain why things are the way they are, was written mainly as a form of entertainment. Ovid did not take mythology seriously and viewed the whole business as a joke, or something to be made fun of. His rendering of the beginning of the world goes like this. Ante mare et terras quod teget omnia caelum, unus erat toto naturae vultus in orbe, quam dixere chaos rudis indigestaque mollis nec quicquam nisi pondus iners, congestaque eodem non bene iunctaram discordia, semina rerum. Nullis ad hoc mundo praebibat lumina Titan, nec nova crescendo reparabat connuo Phoebe, nec circumfuso pendebat in aere telis, ponderibus libratis suus, nec brachia longo margine terrarum porexerat amphitrite, utque aer, telis illic et pontis et aether. The translation of this excerpt is, before the sea, and earth, and sky, which covers all things, one was the face of the whole of nature in the world which men call chaos. A raw and disorganized mass, not anything except inert mass, and discordant seeds of things not well joined in that same place. No Titan, until now, was holding forth light on the world. By means of growing, Phoebe renewed her horns. And there was no earth being suspended in surrounding air balanced by her own weight. Neither had the sea stretched out her arms along the long edges of earth, and there existed both land and sea and air in this place. This passage can be most easily compared to the previous excerpt from Cicero, which talks about the layout of the universe in the 9 spheres that it is comprised of. It does not necessarily talk about what the universe was comprised of so much as what there was before it. Much like the Greek creation myth, Ovid seems to believe that there is an all-encompassing nothingness that eventually gave birth to the planets that we live on and know about today. Because of this, Ovid's astronomical knowledge is often credited defective, so most scholars believe that Cicero's description is more to be trusted. This excerpt features 2 rhetorical devices, one of which, the polysyndeton, highlights how much appeared after chaos, and the other, the long adjective, modifies the earth and how it came to be suspended by its own weight. Another passage from Ovid's Metamorphoses highlights the emergence of human beings, giving a primitive creation story as to how humankind came to be. This passage should be held in contrast to the previous passage. Going off the idea that Ovid does not seem to take myths and their subjects seriously, he offers readers 2 options and allows them to choose whichever creation myth they are more inclined to, instead of focusing on one that is more widely held as the main creation story. Sanctius his animal mentis capacis altae deerat ad hoc et quod dominare in cetera posset. Natus homo est, sive hunc divino semine fecit. Ille opifex rerum mundi melioris origo, sive recens tillus seductaque nuper ab alto althere cognati retenebat semina caeli, quam satus iapeto mixtam pluvalibus undis finxit in effigiam moderantum cuncte deorum, pronaque cum specten animalia cetere terram, os homini sublime dedit, caelumque videre iuset et erectos ad sidera tollere voltus, sic modo quae fuerat rudis et sine imagine, tellus induit ignotas hominum conversa figuras. The translation of this passage is, a living thing more noble and more capable of a higher mind was lacking yet. Someone who would be dominant over other animals was lacking. Man was born. Either the Creator God made him from divine seeds, source of a better world, or the earth, having been led away from the high heavens, still contained seeds of the well-known to her skies. Prometheus fashioned it, having been mixed with rainy waves, into a copy of the gods governing all things, and although the remaining creatures, being bent forward, looked at the earth, he gave man face high and ordered him to see the sky, and raised to the sky his upright face. It is incredibly interesting that while the Greeks have one creation story that they focus a lot of their mythology on, the Romans focus more on the founding of their country and less on the founding of the world. While Roman mythology may lack a body of divine narratives as extensive as that found in Greek literature, Romulus and Remus, suckling the she-wolf, is as famous as any image from Greek mythology except for maybe the Trojan horse. Because Latin literature was more widely known in Europe throughout the Middle Ages and into the Renaissance, the interpretations of Greek myths by the Romans often had the greater influence on narrative and pictorial representations of classical mythology than the Greek sources. The Roman tradition is rich in historical myths or legends concerning the foundation and rise of the city. These narratives focus on human actors, with only the occasional intervention from deities, but a pervasive sense of divinely ordered destiny. In Rome's earliest period, history and myth have a mutual and complementary relationship. Major sources for Roman myth include, of course, the Aeneid of Virgil, as well as the first few books of Livy's history. Other important sources are the Fasti of Ovid, a six-book poem structured by the Roman religious calendar, and the fourth book of Elegies by Propertius. Scenes from Roman myth also appear in Roman wall painting, coins, and sculpture, particularly reliefs. Wow, that was a lot of information. I hope you enjoyed my video, and thanks for watching.